This is my video presentation assignment for highlighting multiple methods of technology integration. The four methods that I chose that I use within my class are Google Classroom, Flipped Grid, VoiceThread, Kahoot, Quizlet Live, and then ZSpace, which is a virtual 3D lab that we have at Haven. Okay, so my reasoning for these methods, for the ZSpace lab, it gets students out of the classroom and able to do more hands-on virtual reality type exploration that they can do. We recently just went there to dissect a mahi-mahi fish. So we are currently learning about bony fish versus cartilaginous fish, so sharks, which we'll dissect in lab, but I wanted them to see what a bony fish would be like compared to a shark. So the ZSpace lab allowed us to do a dissection where I didn't have to order the specimens and cost the school more money when we have this application in a lab just down the hall. We've also used this in my human body systems. We can use the Essential Anatomy app, and they can look at the bones of the body, the muscles and how they connect to bones, nerves, where the nerves connect, what they go to, where they come from. So it's really cool for the students to kind of see things in 3D that they really wouldn't be able to. Another example would be when earlier in the year we talked about a lot of DNA cell stuff, things that is very hard for them to visualize. I could take them to the lab and we can open up an app that would let them interact with those things that they struggle with visualizing, those tiny little things of science. So I really like the ZSpace lab. It really enhances the students' learning because they're able to visualize more of what they're learning about instead of just seeing diagrams or pictures that I put on a PowerPoint. They can actually go in and manipulate things in the ZSpace lab. Let's see, my reason for selecting the Google Classroom, it just makes it so much easier to get information out to the students, for them to respond back to me. And when they turn in assignments, they still have that assignment. So if they're turning in a study guide for me to review before a test, they still have access to that study guide to study while I'm grading it, which isn't something that you can do with paper form, turning it in, waiting for me to grade it, and then getting it back. It's also been helpful for athletes, band members, our choir students, our forensic students, students that are constantly missing, especially like FFA students. They've been gone quite a bit this spring semester. So in Classroom, I just put in the date and everything that we do, and any assignments or PowerPoints or notes that we've gone through that day are available on Classroom for them, so then they can just go there and they know what they missed. And so it's just easier for students to see what they've missed that day instead of to coming into every single classroom. Okay, Ms. Zerger, what did I miss in science today? Well, it's on Google Classroom. It's all there for you. If you have any questions, let me know. So it's just an easier portal for the students and for me to interact and get their assignments and then get their assignments back to me. I also found that I do a lot better job of communicating. On Classroom, I do comments on Google Docs, and to me, it's so much easier for me to type out those comments than to write over and over so many. And if somebody makes the same mistake on a previous or another student's assignment, I can just copy and paste my same comment. So I feel like I'm able to give them better feedback with using Google Classroom. The Flipgrid VoiceThread, I've just started using VoiceThread, so I'm still a little new to it, but again, baseball and softball, they play twice a week, and for home games, they get out at like 2:30. So I've got students missing 6th and 7th hour, and then for away games, the earliest they left this year is 12, I think. So if they're doing that twice a week, I have 3 or 4 students who are always gone 6th and 7th hour for me. So with the voice thread, it really helps the students that are constantly absent, for sports, who are sick, band, choir. I can just do my presentation, whether they see me or they just see my screen and my little mouse showing, explaining things, for them to log on. I can provide the notes through Google Classroom, and they can fill those out that night or that morning or the next night. And it also helps when I'm not there. So I coach soccer at a different school, so I have to miss sometimes my 7th hour to get to soccer games. So then I can just upload my lecture recording, their notes, and they watch it while I'm gone, and so we don't miss a day of learning. The Flipgrid, I've used this once or twice, but it really helps when we were talking about processes. So cellular respiration and photosynthesis. I had the students record themselves going through the process. They could use their notes to read, and then I had them record again without their notes. And that way they had a recording of hearing the process. A lot of my students are more auditory learners, and so I thought, okay, well, let's have them record themselves listening or reading the process than just listening to me. That way they could use their own words and they could explain it the best that made sense to them. And then the last method would be the Kahoots and the Quizlet Live. So I use these to review almost every day, especially terminology, because science kind of is like a foreign language for some of my students. So every 10 minutes of the first 50 minutes of class, we do a Kahoot. We either do the team form, or we do individual, or we do the Quizlet Live. And they really have enjoyed the Quizlet Live because they're very competitive, and they like getting into groups, especially the students who may be struggling a little more with the information, get to learn from their peers. I have found that this has tremendously helped many of my students if we're able to review every single day what we've learned the day before and then adding on top of that. I've really enjoyed those two and using those two in my classroom. Let's see, reflect on the current use of technology, discussing potential changes or adaptations you would consider. I feel like I've used technology quite a bit in my classroom. I probably could use it more. I don't do tests or quizzes using technology just because I personally still don't feel comfortable putting it on there. Our district doesn't have a way to do a lockdown tab like on Blackboard you can. So if you log out of that or switch to a different tab, it sends in what you've done. And so I'm just a little iffy about putting my quizzes and my tests online for them to do because I can't watch every single student all the time. And I know they find ways to get around that. But we've talked to my district a few other teachers about finding a application that allows us to lock down tabs. I really would like to find more online interactive labs just because we don't have a lot of funding for me to get lab supplies, especially for the early units that we talk about that are very microscopic, things that are difficult for the students to visualize. I wish we had, or I could find more online and more interactive than what's out there labs for them to do. Reflect on current usage changes. With this module, we talked about the flipped classroom, and I at first was super scared of that, but after watching a few clips of these two guys like explain, take it one lesson at a time, do just one tiny unit and see how that works. And then they broke down, here are some, issues that we've run into, here's how we fix them. What about students without Wi-Fi or internet? What can you do to help them to be interactive with the flipped classroom as well. And I think that the flipped classroom is such a cool idea. It would be really helpful, especially for my students who I need to challenge more, who get the information like that, where I can have my videos up of the next lessons that they can already watch, and they can be moving on, and they could be going further in depth than what my other students are capable of. I really want to try this for my anatomy and physiology class next year. So putting my lectures online for them and having them view them the night before. That way, when we come to class time, we can interact more. We can discuss. We can say, okay, what did you have questions on? What did you not get? What do I need to go more in depth on? That way, if they know it, we don't have to talk about it and spend a day talking about it or two. They can watch it on their own time. They know it. We move on to the more difficult stuff. So I'm excited to try transitioning into that next year. I don't see myself doing the whole class as a flipped classroom, but doing some of the units, like the muscular unit and probably the skeletal system, as more of a flipped classroom style. Reflect how the use of technology affects student learning. I think there's both good and negative things about the technology affecting the learning. Good would be, they've grown up with technology. They're going to go out into the world using technology. So the more that we can get them interacting with different applications, ways to use discussion, ways to upload videos, I think will really prepare them for what they'll be doing in college and then after college. The downside, I think sometimes our students miss that face-to-face discussion. So there are days where I try to do discussion just in a big group, and we don't use our Chromebooks for the day, just to kind of unplug and get more personal and more of that face-to-face interaction. But I think there are great ways that technology can help the students' learning. We did a project last semester with our Chromebooks, and we used clap motion, I think it was called, and we made a stop motion of what mitosis, cell division, looks like, and that really helped them visualize what was going on and why it was going on, because they had to manipulate their cells to look like what a cell would look like going through cell division. And so I think there's awesome ways that technology affects our students' learnings, but then there are the downside of, okay, my friend did this assignment, let me just copy and paste it, or, oh, we're taking this quiz online, I'll just pull up my notes on the side. So I think we still have a long ways to go of, fixing some of those things, but I'm excited to use more technology in my room. Next year, when I'm more comfortable with my teaching style, my students' learning styles, and just finding more and more apps out there that I can use.